Hello, Music Multiverse listeners. Welcome to Beyond Your Radio. I'm your host from the lonely end of the leaf, Mark Kulagowski. Welcome to a new show on the channel, and appropriately so, Albums from the Leaf, episode 2. That leaf, of course, represents not only the greatest of all breakfast condiments, maple syrup, but the great, vast country of Canada. This show, our panelists each bring one great album from Canada to light, a wondrous recording and artistry coming from all ends of that great red and white nation, from Yukon to Saskatchewan, from Prince George to Prince Edward Island. There's a band, a musician there somewhere to be discovered or rediscovered. I'm not Canadian. They don't pay me well enough. I have visited record stores in Canada to the tune of hundreds of hours lost in my life. Is anyone else on the panel Canadian? Absolutely not. One of them's not even allowed in. So, do we wish we were Canadian? Yes. Would we love some Canadians on the panel? Yes. Bring that Canadian bacon, baby. Do I deserve honorary Canadian status for all the bands I praise, concerts I've been to? Probably not. But one thing I am, and my panelists are always in agreement, is Canada never lets me down when developing a band and bringing out their debut record. And I have an example of this tonight. And I'm sure my panelists have some wonderful choices too. This show is all about fading albums past and present. Known, unknown, on the rack, off the rack. Too obscure to mention. Oh, might be one of those tonight. Watch this show. You might be surprised who's actually Canadian. Hey, panelists. Sorry about that long introduction, eh?
No problem.
Yeah.
We expect that from you, Mark. Boss, hey. The boss.
Nice to know. Nice to know. So, we always flip a coin to see who goes first, and the coin always lands on ladies first.
Oh, great.
So,
okay.
Yeah, or as first of all, panelists tonight. Jeff Young from Tampa, Florida, and Damn, as she will be known from now on. I think turn around, back of the shirt.
Can you see it?
There it is. Damn. Not spelled the same way, but those are all the initials Deb needs. We were going to turn her into a symbol, but we couldn't agree on a symbol. Anyway, I'll let you start off first.
All right. Thank you for having me. The album that I chose was Katie Lang's Ingenue. It was her her second solo album. It's actually from 1992. It's got 10 songs on it. It's pretty long. It's about an hour and 10 minutes or so, I think, unless I was listening to the anniversary edition, so it was probably remastered longer, but that was the one that I found easiest. A little background on Katie Lang. She was born in Alberta in 1961. And for the non-Canadians listening, Alberta is a province, not a city. So it's like a state to the Canadians. Her early years, her music was more rooted around country and punk. And they gave it a little pointage of cow punk. But this particular album really has hardly any country influences in it as far as I could see. I've listened to it over and over and over again. This album is more jazz, porch songs, kind of. Interesting enough, there's some other like Latin influences in it. You can hear here and there. Not a lot, but if you listen
I don't know Katie Lang very well at all.
You don't? In fact, no. I don't think that I knew she was Canadian per se. I think I knew in far along ago, but lost. I'll always know that Anne Murray is Canadian, but I would never remember that Katie Lang is Canadian. She's done a lot of collaborations with very famous people, including Tony Bennett and Elton John, and of course, Anne Murray. She did some soundtracks, and one of her more famous ones is she did a contribution to Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, which is a it was a book, but it's rooted in Savannah, which I found that was kind of interesting that they picked somebody like her, but it was definitely where her music was at the time, not what her roots were, I don't think. She did James Bond, the credit song for Tomorrow Never Dies. And then she's well known for being a gay rights activist, an animals activist, and Tibetan rights. So she does a lot of social work, which a lot of Canadians do, and did way before it caught on in the US to become a thing. But I chose this album because I started listening to it a lot because of her major hit in 92 on this album. And it was also easy listening when trying to get my kids to sleep. They were babies at the time, and this song is very calm. There's not a lot of hard hitting anything in it. Just her voice is very powerful without being over the top. You could tell that she's got that easy listening jazz torch song type thing. She's very soft, but like I said, forceful. There's a little vibrato in some of her songs. And I read that she has been likened to a Wayne Newton, which is interesting. The first track that I'll mention, I have two tracks that I especially like, and they are obviously the two hits off of the albums. The first one that I like is Miss Chantilane. I think that's how you say it, Miss Chantilane. That's the one that I was talking about. There's a little salsa in there, Latin, but there's a Patsy Cline sound to it too. You can tell that she's influenced by people like Patsy Cline or a Billie Holiday. And many of the songs that she has on this album, especially this one, she's like a female crooner, and it's kind of cool because you just think of a crooner as being, Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra, not a female. The second track I like is obviously her biggest hit is Constant Cravings, that made her a name in the US. And that hit the charts and put that album into contention for a Grammy nomination, is for her to become, what was it, Female Pop Artist of the Year. There's an interesting fact about that song. Keith Richards' daughter was listening to this album so much, and he didn't even know who k.d. lang was. And a few years pass, and he and Mick Jagger are getting all the songs together for Bridges of Babylon. And the one song, Anybody Seen My Baby, they had to credit her as the writer because subliminally, Keith Richards wrote the opening that sounds exactly like Constant Craving. And he didn't even know who it was. And I guess his daughter said, Dad, I think you stole that. And I found that so interesting because we hear all of these court cases and people going, I did not steal that song. I did not steal that song, or I didn't steal that riff or that underlying track. And you just don't know where you get a feeling of something. A lot of times you don't come through it inspirationally from yourself. It comes from somebody else. So, when she came out in 1993 as a lesbian, that was around the time that, her album was really making it big. And she was boycotted by a lot of US radio stations. And when she went to the Grammys, she had to face a picket line of protesters. And she still went in there and she won her Grammy. And so as a woman, I admire her very much.
Yeah, I'll never understand that stuff. What is it? I mean, there's a lot of artists that like to boycott their state of affairs, but not their music.
I know.
Stupid Americans.
Exactly. What'd you say?
Stupid Americans.
Stupid Americans. Yeah, we're not as, like I said, we aren't as socially conscious as the Canadians are. It takes us a little bit to catch up, and then sometimes Americans go overboard, though. So that's what I have to say about k.d. lang, and I inspire you all to listen to it. You too, Jeff.
Yes.
I mean,
it's a great record. A lot of great melody.
Yeah. It's soothing. If you can't sleep and you need to get your mind off of things, it will help you. So that's mine. Thank you for inviting me because that was a fun challenge.
Good. Yeah. Female crooner is a
Yes.
good word, but probably one of the most unique in the crooner realm because she's she doesn't let her voice be the whole thing. There's a lot of great undertone band workmanship throughout it all.
Yes.
And really, she's got a better, I don't know, just male crooners it's distinct. You already know, they all kind of have that similarity. She was completely different. And even the albums of the, recent, it's very different.
Is there any musicians on that album of note that we would have heard of? I didn't look at who played on her album.
On Ingenue, I don't
Sorry.
believe so.
I wasn't prepared.
I'll think of her now as Katie and Lang.
Oh, look, he's like going into his wine vault.
I was trying to figure out who was produced by. That was anybody that was famous.
No,
but
I didn't
I
recognize the
don't think
name.
so.
No.
Yeah, that's right. I got every album.
Mark, it looks like you live in the basement of the Smithsonian.
He's got Archie Bunker's chair.
I start putting on plastic gloves. Let me go into the archives. No, I don't see anybody as of mention that
Interesting.
needed to be noted for their arrangements with other people.
Because I would have been embarrassed if I slated somebody. There she is. Yep.
The 25th anniversary has the MTV Unplugged recording as the second part of it. So that's why the hour plus.
Okay, got it.
The original record's only 44 minutes or something long. Does it say here? No, it doesn't.
Well, it would make more sense.
That Constant Craving is the last track.
It is. It is. You'd recognize it.
There's not a bad track.
Yeah.
So let's hear from Mr. Young. What does he bring to the table?
I picked probably one of my favorite Canadian albums of all time that I've probably listened to countless times with you many times too, Mark. So I picked Fully Completely from the Tragically Hip.
Okay.
Which I'm wearing a shirt actually. This is Fully Completely.
Yeah.
Oh, look at you. Look at you.
Third studio album, 1992. That came out after Up to Here and Road Apples. And it was recorded in London, not Ontario, but England. There were 6 singles that came off of this. So Locked in the Trunk of a Car, 50 Mission Cap, Courage at the 100th Meridian, and then 2 others, Looking for a Place to Happen and Fully Completely, the title track. This is the first album that featured lyrics only from Gord Downie. During the second album, he said he was not going to sing anything that wasn't his own anymore. So this is the first one to follow that decision. And then this album, I guess, was noted the contrast. The first 2 was they were trying, when they recorded this album, they were not going to mimic their live sound like they did in the first 2. And each track was built instrument by instrument. And they recorded, I think, over 5 weeks, and then they did the lyrics over that in like a couple days. It had the art, which is pretty interesting, was budgeted for $30,000. So they got an artist from, there was a Dutch artist, and the idea of the art, the idea of the album cover was kind of around 3 ideas of decay, decadence, and rebirth. And the cover itself, if you can't tell from my shirt, which you probably can't, it's 30 segmented photocopied images pasted together. And while the band had rights to license the art, they didn't actually own it. But later in the 90s, they did purchase it from a museum, and it hangs in their studio now in Kingston, Ontario. The lyrics are heavily centered around the Canadian icons in history. So like the first one, Courage, for Hugh McClellan, is a reference to the Canadian author, inspired by his novel, which is called The Watch That Ends the Night. Then the second track, Looking for a Place to Happen, is more about European encroachment and the eventual annexation of the indigenous lands of North America. And third track, at the 100th Meridian, it's based on the line of longitude that separates much of Western Canada from the Atlantic regions. And then 50 Mission Cap is about Toronto Maple Leafs player Bill Barocco. Also, it's about 50 mission caps that were provided to elite bomber pilots in World War II. So they thought, Tragical Hip and MCA, the record label, thought and really had high hopes that this was going to be a good American success, but it didn't happen. And I don't know what MCA was thinking. Like, they didn't get immediate success. They stopped promoting the album after 2 weeks. So I don't know what they were expecting, but it's just far too good of an album to give up on, I think, that quickly. Obviously, the success in Canada is unquestioned. It's listed on the top 5 of the 100 Canadian albums of all time, and number 9 on 102.1 The Edge's all-time list. And it was the only album they actually released of theirs in Japan. And then rather than actually touring normally, like with their album being the centerpiece, and just instead of doing a regular tour, they organized what they called Another Roadside Attraction in '93, which was a traveling music and arts summer festival, which promoted more littler known bands across Canada. Some of those bands included Midnight Oil, Crash Vegas, Hot House Flowers, and Daniel Lanois. And then in 2014 and 15, they had a 22nd anniversary tour where they played the full album front to back. But it's an awesome album. Every song stands out on its own pretty much. And yeah, I couldn't even begin to tell you how many times I've listened to it. And for as many times I've listened to it, probably Mark has listened to it even more. So,
maybe.
I love that. One thing I wanted to say was, I mean, outside of MCA not promoting it past 2 weeks, don't you think like the subject matter for the US on what those songs were about would be lost on Americans if you're not somebody that lives near the border? I mean, it's kind of obscure stuff. Or do you think that
I think that's an old, that might have been true at the time. It's an old way of thinking with radio, like, oh, it's not about America. Like, well,
right.
So many songs aren't. Like, how many songs in the British Revolution were about America? Like, not many,
True. I just did, Americans can be very, bourgeois and like very self-centered. And, if I don't understand it, I'm not going to like it. Or was the music itself, aside from the lyrics, good enough that, because a lot of people don't even listen to the lyrics. They don't even know what a song is about.
Yeah, there's lots of people who listen to songs their whole life and don't even really know what it's about, but they just like it.
True. So it's MCA's fault. Yeah.
I guess. I don't know.
That's crazy.
This is a victim of timing. Very bad victim of timing.
Why?
It's 1992. One of the largest records in the history of records comes out in 90.
Thriller? No.
Nirvana.
Don't ask me.
Never.
Oh.
Okay?
They're just south of the border.
That's one album. I mean,
but it is an album that is completely and utterly in the wheelhouse of what's going on at the time. Okay, the Tragically Hip are not Seattle. They're not Pearl Jam. They're not Soundgarden. They're not Stone Temple.
What's funny though is for as much success as they had in Canada, like number 1 at everything, you'd think someone would have taken a second look at it.
Yeah.
I mean, even at that point, Rush sales weren't good with records in the U.S. because that was not, Roll the Bones wasn't crushing it, or neither was the one that came after that. So don't get me wrong, I MCA could have pushed harder, but I think when you look at monetary things that go on, you probably go, we're beating a dead horse, right? Let the band be the band. They're selling in Canada by the gaggle. We don't need to spend this money. Let's just make our money and see what we can do next. And they really probably put a lot into Day for Night, because the actuality is that was the one they pressed harder, and that was a bigger U.S. sale record. And they got on.
I think they needed it.
Yeah, it's still to this day in the top 5 of all time as to why a band didn't break out of their own country. There are lots of those discussions, but I will say, and that's where, according to Gord Downey, at that 100th meridian, that's where the real pain began. So
there's still time.
Yes,
there's still time. Look
at Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin had not a #1 single ever.
That's right. Look at.
So, and then people go back to the catalog and go, oh my God. So many of my friends, so many other people, when I was listening to them, they would go, they suck. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? And then later on, they're like, man, I'm like, really?
It's true. That's absolutely true. You're right.
The greatest bar bands of all time. Anyway, so excellent pick. Obviously, we did a Sunday catalog review show last month. Yep. Definitely touched on that quite a bit, and Fully Completely was a lot of favorites for the panelists for sure in the top 5. So, which leaves it to me for the last part. So, take you to the year. I guess the year is 1976. This band decide. Say again.
I was 5.
We were 5.
Shut up.
Here's 1976. The world is still clamoring for something that they lost. They lost a certain prominent band that used to dominate everything from England. Ran roughshod over the U.S., influenced thousands of bands, millions of bands, everything. So this release happens in September of 1976 in North America. The band decided no photos, no individual music credits, and no biographical information in the album package. All songs were simply listed as being and written by and published by. I can't find my album, which is really making me angry. So this is not going to work out as well as I want to. By the band Klaatu, Klaatu. Very nice cover. Look at that. That's a beautiful cover for 1976.
It looks like a cereal box.
And Juno winning cover art.
Oh, nice.
All right. As if that matters for anything.
Klaatu to you, buddy.
To you. So the album actually has a title.
That's our new thing instead of shut up.
Yeah, it's 3:47 Eastern Standard Time is the name of the album.
What is it?
3:47 Eastern Standard Time.
Oh.
So
that's when I get home from work.
Yes, there you go, right? Maybe I don't know what it meant to them. I didn't really look it up. So note that this collective written credited coverage
is that the Canadian 420?
It's actually funny.
You're funny, Jeff.
I'll be here all week. Try the deal.
Solely to Long or to the team of Wolschuck and Tome, even though Tome was not actually a member of Klaatu. The album was met with moderate positive reviews, but by Christmas of that year, sales had stalled and the album was pretty much forgotten. Until in 1977, an article published in Providence Journal by a man named Stephen Smith speculated that 3:47 Eastern Standard could actually be a release by a secretly reunited Beatles. And all of a sudden, they thought it was under a pseudonym, leading to widespread rumors. These rumors were fueled by a number of factors, including the fact that their album was released by Capitol Records. Also, the Beatles label, the lack of artist and producer credits and photographs, and nothing to the tune that would identify the band. Not even the fact that they were Canadian. Klaatu avoidance of public performances, and the fact that the group's vocal and musical style was reminiscent of the Beatles for sure, as is present on the Sub Rosa Subway, which I hope I can play for you. We'll see if YouTube blocks me. So Klaatu, 1976 to 3:47, eventually becomes what everybody believes is a Beatles reunion album, not with a Beatles name on it. So it gets crazy at a certain point. Cool. Album sales start to rocket, and all of a sudden they get to have Sub Rosa Subway on the radio. Then all of a sudden calling occupants of Interplanetary Craft. on the radio, becomes a hit. So all of a sudden, right out of nowhere, you've got a band with no identifying marker. And then eventually, while all this is happening, they're in England recording their second album. Now, this is progressive Baroque pop with a Beatles-esque mojo to it. So think of the Beatles as if they went 70s full psychedelia. Okay. It is a very good listen. It's very well produced. So while that's going on, they're in making this album. What happened then? Well, another article is released on the Beatles as Klaatu theory under the title "Deaf Idiot Journalist Starts Beatles Rumor." Remember, we're not in the age of media happening really fast. There's no texting going on. Shit's not happening that fast. Capitol Records, who controlled the Beatles music in the U.S., tried to make as much of the rumor as possible by issuing ambiguously worded statements that failed to make the band's identity clear at all. So everyone is playing along, which is hilarious. The program director of the WWDC in Washington, D.C. checked the records at the U.S. copyright and uncovered the band's member's real name. So there had to be somebody who had to go, well, I'm going to find out the real truth. Why let this go any further? And then it ended at that point.
Oh, no.
So the band's second album, Hope, released in 1977, the same year, included orchestral contributions by the London Symphony Orchestra. And their third album is notable, for a few tracks, but nothing to the fact of what happened with 3:47 Eastern Standard Time.
Investigative
so that is my album from the Leaf with a great story behind it. It is a great listen. I'm not just saying it just because it sparked some rumors and has an interesting story. It is a very good record, and if I can find my vinyl copy,
but can you play it in a hockey locker room?
I don't know. Maybe. Maybe in the after the second intermission and you're already down by 10.
Yeah. Yeah, either that or at the end of the game, and when you're doing your 3:48.
Yeah, there's nothing like at the end they shake hands to Dr. Marvello, or True Life Hero, I don't know. But it's only 36-minute record, 36 and some change. But
interesting. How do you spell that, Mark?
K as in kangaroo, L as in la, A is in apple, A is in apple, T is in Tom, U is in unbelievable.
That sounds like a Inuit name.
Yes, I didn't really look as to see what the naming.
Hold on, I want to look up Inuit.
Okay. Eskimo, but we're not allowed to say Eskimo anymore.
Well, I want to obviously thank my panelists for bringing the albums they did tonight. Again, Katie Lang's Ingenue, The Tragically Hips Fully Completely, and Klaatu's 3:47 Eastern Standard Time. We'll do this again in 2 weeks. And between that, we're going to do panelists' favorites. And I think we're to the year 2000.
Yep.
Whoa. We should see if we can get Conan O'Brien to host. In the year 2000. Anyway, I digress.
Y2K.
Y2K, yeah.
We're on the web at www.beyondyourradio.com, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I should probably get on TikTok. Somebody tell me why I shouldn't, but probably should. We'd love for you to subscribe if you haven't already. Like, comment. Please be nice with the comments. People have been beating me up lately. I don't know why. I mean, I spelled Jimmy Buffett wrong. Yes, that's spell check. Spell correction.
I only did it that one time.
Thank you all and happy listening.
Bye.